So budget day. So CS Rotich this afternoon will be giving his budget estimates for the 2018-2019 financial year. And today on Deep Dive, we just want to make sense of what to expect in a few hours from now. And to help us to do this is Anne Magundu, who is the Senior Tax Manager at Ernst & Young, and Edna Gitachu, Senior Tax Manager at PwC. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome to Capital FM. So to start with, let's start with the elephant in the room. We have a record budget of 3 trillion against a tax collection of 1.9 trillion. As a country, are we living beyond our means? And maybe you can start there.
Oh, yeah, Ken, from that you can see that definitely the deficit is quite high. And the question that one would ask is, are we basing our budget on realistic revenue? That said, we cannot say that we'll put on hold our development agendas. Basically, even from an individual perspective, at times you may have to step out and borrow to meet your development agendas. So for me, it's not really that we're living beyond our means. It's that you're trying to develop. Given that, then what we need to look into is how can we collect more, generate more revenues from the investment that we make.
Okay.
Because every development project that is put in place is basically to maybe generate more revenues or make things easier and thereby contribute to a high economic growth. So what needs to be really checked from the borrowings is, are we putting the monies where it should be, and are we getting back the return that we anticipated?
Okay. But the issue remains that we still have a deficit, and it's quite a big deficit. We have this target of raising revenue, collecting revenue from KRA, 1.5 trillion. That was last year, last financial year, but we've still fell short by around 400 million. Edna, what is the realistic? Are we being realistic in terms of the targets that we are setting ourselves in terms of revenue collection?
I think if you're looking at the KRA revenue collection targets, over the years they have been behind target. In the current financial year, probably this would be attributed to the prolonged electioneering period, which had a significant impact on businesses. But going forward, the question that we should be asking ourselves, what is this that KRA needs to do to be able to meet their revenue targets? And KRA basically has two options. The first option is increase the tax rate, which is commonly referred to as deepening the tax base, or bring in more taxpayers into the tax net. So in the recent past, we have seen moves towards increasing of tax rates. We have a draft income tax bill that proposes to increase the tax rates for individuals and corporates to about 35%. We also have another bill in Parliament, the Tax Laws Amendment Bill, that is seeking to clean up the VAT Act and move a number of commodities from zero-rated to exempt, which will also have an impact in terms of collection of taxes.
Okay. But just to follow up on that, of course, Kenyans will not be happy to hear that, we are paying more tax to already what most people feel that we overtaxed. What are the other options apart from raising tax? Does the CS have access to other options of broadening this tax base, tax collection?
Yes, Ken, the CS has an option of expanding the tax base, and there are various options on the table. The first one is we need to ask ourselves, about 70% of the tax that is collected in this country is collected from the large taxpayers' office. So how do we bring in more taxpayers into the tax net? In the income tax bill, the draft income tax bill that was released recently, we've seen a move to tax the informal sector through presumptive tax. This is going to be around 15% of the business licenses. We also seen the move to embrace iTax, and under iTax they can be able to net in more taxpayers. Probably the next step that government should take is to integrate iTax with IFMIS to see who are these suppliers to the government and are they declaring their tax obligations. Of interest is that as a country we have about 19 million registered voters, but only about 20% of those are registered under iTax. So the question would be, how do we get in more taxpayers into the tax net? And one of the possible solutions is we have a single identifier. We'll appreciate that once we are born, we have birth certificates with the different numbers. Once we get of age, we have an ID number, a PIN number, and the list continues, NHIF, NSSF. So probably we need to work towards getting a single identification
from
for
birth
all
to
individuals.
death, so to speak.
Yes, from birth to death.
So that will allow us just to monitor people from different levels of education and working.
Yes, and
Okay.
also to track economic activities of these
Okay.
individuals.
Okay. Debt is a big issue. We have been talking about debt for the last, a couple of years, and it's ballooning. It's now at 870 billion, and going by the budget, it means that we'll have to borrow more to bridge this gap. So, Anne, what are some of the options that are available for the government in terms of managing this debt, because it's quite big now?
Yeah, this is a real concern for the citizens of Kenya, because it seems maybe in future may be correcting revenues to repay debts. So it's an issue that needs to really be looked into critically in terms of management.
Okay.
That said, you also have to look at other avenues of raising revenues. As my colleague has said, the KRA have various options, including widening the tax net. People not paying taxes being put in the tax net. Still on the same issue of debt management, at times we get a lot of reports, mainly from the Auditor General, in form of how the funds are being used. So if are we really borrowing money that is not being put into the right use? So those are some of the issues that needs to be looked into in terms of managing this debt. Then in addition, we need also to look at how we may restructure our debts with the external lenders and even from local lenders.
Okay.
I know that in the current year we have the sovereign board, part of it is coming to mature, so expected to pay more, and also there are a lot of debt transactions that are to take place in the coming financial year.
Okay.
So maybe the CS may look back to the lenders and ask if there are ways, or if there are any clauses within the agreements for extension of the loan repayment period that will be at ease and release some more revenues to be directed to revenue generating activities.
Should we be concerned as a nation that we are paying 850 billion in terms of debt? Is this something that should concern us? Should we be afraid that we are heading the way of Greece?
To say the truth, that's a very high percentage compared to the revenue target of 1.3 trillions in the year. And what we need to do mainly is about discipline as a country. Still, if I take an example of an individual,
yes,
if you keep on borrowing from financial institutions and you're not able to manage that debt, it may come to swallow you, can even render you incapable of meeting your basic needs.
yes.
So as a country, we need to really rethink where we are borrowing from and how we curtail it. How we curtail that.
Okay.
Also, we see that there are a lot of concerns even by the monetary bodies, like IMF, that is the country really broke or what is in for us as a country.
Okay.
So with all those concerns even by the citizens, we need to look at this matter, and it's an issue that everyone is concerned about.
The World Bank has, in its recommendation, has told the government that there needs to be some sort of financial consolidation. What are some of the areas you see the governments to inject some fiscal discipline?
Yeah, I think that's a real challenge. We have issues that are being already at the court corridors,
Okay.
others with the EACC, and many others that are not uncovered.
Okay.
So it's a big outcry out there. So we need Kenyans, wherever they are, to be more patriotic. Because when money is put towards a given project, if it is well used, it is for benefit for every one of us. But if it gets into a few people's pockets, then we are not headed in the right direction. So we just need to really strengthen our institutions, that is the government, and also for the private sector that really runs with the government projects, so need to be patriotic, doing the right thing for betterment of our country and also for the future generation.
Okay. So talking about the private sector, I'm sure they'll be keenly watching the announcements by Rotich this afternoon. What do you think they will be hoping to hear, Edna?
Yeah, for the business community, one of the things that is really of interest to them is ease of doing business here in Kenya.
Okay.
Last year, the World Bank ranked Kenya third after Rwanda and Mauritius, which was a welcome move, and 80th globally. So as a business person, would want to find out how can we be able to do our business better. Another thing that would be of concern, as my colleague has alluded, is the issue of corruption.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money that is being collected by the government.
Yes.
But in the media, there are headline numbers of the amounts that are being lost
They're
through
billions.
corruption. There are
Yeah,
billions.
yeah.
That's a lot.
Mm.
And probably that is also one of the ways of looking at our budget.
Okay.
Do we really require all this expenditure? Or are we
Okay.
saying a certain percentage of it is factoring in corruption?
Yes.
So that would be an area that would be of keen interest to the business community. Another area would be around revenue collection measures.
Mm-hmm.
They would be concerned, how is KRA going to raise more revenue? Is it an increase of the tax rates, or are they going to bring in more taxpayers into the tax net?
Okay. There's also been talk of how the government can bring more people. The development fund, development expenditure, is not being absorbed as it should. It's at around 34-35% of the total budget. But even that, which is still little, it's not being absorbed as it should. What kind of policy measures should Rotich put in place to ensure that this development funds is absorbed in the right place, and it's people actually take accountability for these funds?
I think there are issues around procurement of these projects. And it would be very interesting to see what measures the CS Rotich has around procurement. The move by the head of state to ensure that all the heads of procurement are vetted is a very welcome move. And it also brings in accountability. When it comes to projects, we have this project in the country, who has been awarded, who are the beneficial owners. That transparency is really called for. And we are waiting to see what is going to back that pronouncement that was made yesterday.
Okay. So we went out, Capital FM News went out and talked to a few Kenyans. What are the expectations? Just talking to the Mwananchi and hearing what their views about the budget. Let's just have a listen.
Well, they should probably reduce stuff like, sanitary towels and that kind of things. Wapunguze mshahara ya MPs.
Honestly, with the current status of affairs in this nation, I really don't know. I'm not expecting a lot. When the CS is always talking that his job is like paying debts for this country, nothing much. Absolutely nothing.
If you could change something, what would you change?
Issues that are affecting especially the Mwananchi down there, things to do with health, agriculture. I wish more funds would be used towards that sector.
Actually, right now the country is in a deep hole, and we should find our way of working out things and come out of that hole so that we have a better Kenya for me and you.
Would you like to see money allocated, like toward what, for example?
The Big Four agenda,
Yes.
food, energy. Yeah, and I also want them to work on, I'm seeing Ministry of Water is really, it really needs some good budget because of the floods and all that. We need to see how we're working out. There's no water in the city, but there's floods in the upcountry. So we should work that out.
I of course expect some prices to go down. Of course, something like food. Yeah, basically food. I just want the food prices to go down. Yeah.
Right. So a section of Kenyans have expressed what their major concerns. Food, of course, features prominently there. Basically, the cost of living. And what do you get from that, and what should Rotich do?
I also share with the people's sentiments, because basically what everyone would be looking at is maybe an additional coin into their pocket, given the status of affairs of the cost of living.
Yeah.
Giving an example of a person who is back there in the village, assuming that their daily wages, say 300 shillings. From these 300 shillings, the person is supposed to meet his basic needs, including food, shelter, and maybe water, as someone said. Then you find the other emergencies like health, which comes in and really sweeps a lot of funds. So you find those people, they are living on a very tight kind of a budget from day to day. So what the government can do is try to take away some of the burdens from the people. And this, we've seen some efforts, like the free education for primary and secondary school. That is really a key issue that the Kenya government has taken up. We also need a lot of effort by the government in terms of health.
Yes.
In the recent past, we've seen a lot of news that are not good for the country in terms of people not being taken care of in the public hospitals, and I feel that that's an area that we need a lot of focus. In terms of food, we as a country, we are blessed in terms of the climate and also food availability, but we only lack one thing in terms of preservation. So we find within a short time, we are crying out and saying there's no food.
A lot of food goes to waste.
It goes to waste.
Yes.
So I think there should be a lot of investment in terms of food storage.
Okay.
Yes.
So, Edna, you have heard what a section of Kenyans have said. I don't know what your response is. Do you resonate with their feelings? And also, who do you think will be the winners and the losers in the budget this afternoon?
I think Kenyans are really concerned about the high levels of debt in the country. And one of the issues that probably CS Rotich should think about is how do we manage our debt levels? The other concerns that Kenyans have are around food prices. Are food prices going to continue being affordable, or are the prices likely to increase? Unfortunately, there is a bill currently right now in Parliament that is seeking to change the VAT status of some of these food products. That would be the wheat, maize flour, and milk, to remove them from being zero rated to exempt, which basically would mean that this would have an impact in terms of the cost of these products, which are very basic commodities. So those would be, the ordinary Mwananchi would lose where that is concerned. Other losers would be when it comes to fuel prices. We are expecting 16% VAT on the fuel prices effective from September this year. Again, that is going to drive up the cost of living. In terms of the winners, I think this would be around the Big Four agenda, which is manufacturing, affordable housing, food security, and universal health care. We expect quite a number of incentives to be pronounced today, and also policy measures on how to drive the Big Four agenda.
Okay, finally, it seems it's not going to be very easy for CS Rotich in the coming financial year. But what are the key things that will give him sleepless nights? And
I think not much of a concern for Rotich. He's just made his bed. After reading the budget, he'll have made the bed that he ought to sleep in. So that said, I think the key issue here is about revenue corrections.
yes.
Because already you've set out your expenditure. So how do you meet those? How do you meet those expenditures? You need revenue. So assume in one way or another the envisaged or the expected revenue does not come up. What happens to the matching expense that had been expected to be taken up?
Okay.
So he has to really follow up on the issue of revenue corrections. So I think he'll be so much on KRA's door to make sure that they are meeting their target.
So he'll push the pressure to carry.
Yeah, somehow to some extent.
Okay.
Yeah, that said, debt, I think you've talked about debt over and over again. It's a key matter about management of our funds and also debts going forward, because we wouldn't imagine in a scenario where there's a shortfall, it goes again for an additional debt.
Okay.
Yeah. Then, as it has been said, how do we implement this Big Four agenda? It is the presidential drive in his last term. So somehow it has to be achieved. It involves cost and money. So for Rotich to support the president, he has to avail the funds.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. We've been talking to Anne Magondo, who's a senior tax manager at Ernst & Young, and Edna Gitachu, who's the senior tax manager at PwC. Just to sort of preempt what CS Rotich will be talking about, will be presenting this afternoon. We'll be keenly watching what the statements that will come out of the budget, the policy direction, and we'll keep you updated. So we will have a post-analysis discussion about the budget, and we'll have other guests to also just give us, just break it down for us. Ken Macharia, business editor, Capital FM, and this is Deep Dive.